Watch anyone who's genuinely exceptional at what they do, a craftsman, an athlete, someone at the top of their field, and you'll notice something strange. The hardest parts of what they're doing don't look hard. There's a stillness to it, an economy of motion. Like the difficulty simply isn't present for them the way it clearly is for everyone else attempting the same thing. And the natural conclusion most people reach watching this is that the person was simply born with something the rest of us weren't. That conclusion is almost always wrong. And it's wrong in a way that's genuinely useful to understand, because what you're actually watching is the end result of a very specific process that has nothing to do with raw talent and everything to do with a structure the samurai spent centuries refining for exactly this purpose. That structure applies just as directly to writing, to business, to any craft you're trying to build, as it does to a sword. And once you see the structure clearly, the exceptional performance stops looking mysterious and starts looking like something you can actually build yourself. The 3 stages nobody skips. Japanese martial arts describe the path to mastery through 3 stages called Shu, Ha, and Ri. And understanding these stages honestly is probably the single most useful thing you can take from this entire framework. Because most people fail at mastery, not from lack of effort, but from trying to skip a stage they haven't actually completed. Shu means to protect, or to obey. This is the stage where you follow the form exactly as it was taught to you, without deviation or adding your own ideas, without asking whether there's a better way. A student in Shu doesn't get to have opinions about the technique yet. They practice the kata, the formal, repeated sequence of movements, over and over, exactly as demonstrated, thousands of times, until the movement stops requiring conscious thought. This stage is uncomfortable for most modern learners because it demands something our culture actively discourages: total submission to a structure you don't fully understand yet. You're told to trust the form before you can see why the form works. And most people, especially intelligent, independent-minded people, resist this. They want to understand the reasoning first, adapt the technique to their own style early, personalize it before they've even internalized the basic version. This is precisely how people get stuck at a mediocre level for years. They never fully complete Shu, so everything built afterwards sits on an unstable foundation. Ha means to detach, or to break. Once the form is genuinely internalized, meaning your body executes it without your mind directing every step, you begin to understand why the form works the way it does. And with that understanding, you start to see where it can bend. You begin adapting the technique to your own body, your own strengths, the specific situations you actually encounter. This is where personal style starts to emerge, but critically, it emerges from a place of deep understanding rather than impatience. The practitioner in Ha isn't breaking the rules because the rules are boring. They're breaking them because they've earned the right to know exactly which parts of the rule were essential and which parts were just one way of teaching it. Ri means to leave, or to transcend. This is the stage where the form disappears entirely. The practitioner is no longer executing techniques, they're simply responding, moving, creating, with the original structure so fully absorbed that it's invisible even to them. Musashi described this state in the Book of 5 Rings as moving without conscious intention, the sword acting as an extension of perception rather than a tool being wielded. This is what mastery actually looks like from the outside: effortless, spontaneous, natural, and it's exactly why people mistake it for talent. They're seeing the end of a process and assuming it was the starting condition. The reason this framework matters for anything you're trying to master, writing, business, a sport, a craft, is that skipping stages is the most common reason people plateau. They try to develop a personal style before they've internalized the fundamentals. They try to innovate before they understand what they're innovating on. Shu has to be completed honestly, even though it's the least glamorous and most repetitive stage, because everything built afterward depends entirely on how solid that foundation actually is. Now pay close attention because this is really important. Kata is often misunderstood by people outside martial arts as simple repetition, doing the same motion over and over until it's memorized, the way you might memorize a phone number. This misses what's actually happening. Genuine kata practice involves a quality of attention that transforms repetition into something closer to research. Each repetition is an opportunity to notice something slightly different, a small inefficiency in the movement, and a place where the breath doesn't match the motion, and to correct it, marginally, before the next repetition. This is structurally identical to what Anders Ericsson's research on expertise calls deliberate practice, the finding that raw hours of repetition do not produce expertise, but focused repetition aimed at correcting specific, identified weaknesses does. The difference between 1,000 hours of mindless repetition and 1,000 hours of kata practiced with genuine attention is the difference between someone who plateaus early and someone who continues improving indefinitely. The samurai understood this centuries before Ericsson had the data to prove it. The form matters less than the quality of attention brought to each repetition of it. Here's what this means in real life. Just doing something over and over again isn't enough to become great at it. You improve the fastest when you focus on one specific weakness instead of trying to fix everything at once. Find the one part that's holding you back, work on it, make small improvements, and keep repeating that process until it feels natural. Then move on to the next thing. Most people don't practice this way. They just keep doing the same thing every day, hoping they'll naturally get better with time. While they might improve a little, their progress is often much slower than it could be. The samurai took a different approach. Instead of trying to improve everything at once, they focused on one small part of a skill, practiced it until they got it right, and only then moved on to the next part. Over time, those small improvements added up and helped them master their craft. Zanshin, the discipline that doesn't end when the action does. One of the more overlooked concepts in samurai training is zanshin, which translates roughly to remaining mind or lingering awareness. In sword training, zanshin refers to the state of continued alertness and readiness that a practitioner maintains after executing a technique. The cut is finished, but the awareness, the readiness, the presence does not switch off the moment the physical action ends. This concept has a direct and underappreciated application to how most people practice any skill. Most people, once they've executed a task, mentally check out immediately. The email is sent, the workout is finished, the presentation is delivered, and attention drops instantly to zero. There's no reflection and observation of what actually happened, no genuine presence with the outcome. Zanshin is the opposite of this. It's staying present with what you just did, long enough to actually learn from it, noticing what worked, what felt off, what you'd adjust before the moment fades from memory. This is one of the most practical and least discussed reasons some people improve dramatically faster than others, doing the exact same amount of practice. They're not just doing the thing, they're remaining present with the thing after it's done, extracting information from it that the person who mentally moves on immediately never captures. Building zanshin into your own practice is simple in description and rare in execution. After any significant attempt at your craft, pause before moving to the next thing. Notice, specifically, what just happened. That pause is where a large percentage of the actual learning occurs. Mushin, why the goal is to stop trying. The final concept that you need to understand is mushin, often translated as no mind. This is the state that Shu, Ha, and Ri are ultimately building toward. A state where the practitioner is no longer consciously thinking through technique at all, where action arises directly from trained instinct without the interference of deliberate thought. In competitive swordsmanship, hesitation caused by conscious deliberation was often fatal. The trained response had to arise faster than conscious thought could produce it. This sounds mystical, but the underlying mechanism is well understood in modern cognitive science through the concept of chunking, the way the brain compresses complex, multi-step sequences into single, fast, automatic units once they've been practiced sufficiently. A beginner driver consciously thinks through every component of steering, braking, and mirror checking. An experienced driver does all of it without conscious deliberation, freeing their conscious attention for the genuinely novel elements of the situation in front of them. Mushin, in this light, isn't mystical. It's the endpoint of sufficient, well-structured practice, the point where the fundamentals have been so thoroughly internalized that conscious effort is no longer required to execute them, leaving your full attention available for whatever is actually new or difficult in the moment. This reframes what mastery in any field is actually aiming toward. It's not about applying more effort forever, it's about practicing deliberately enough, for long enough, that the fundamentals stop requiring effort at all, so that all your conscious attention becomes available for the genuinely hard, novel parts of whatever you're doing. This is why masters in any field appear to work with less visible strain than beginners, even while producing dramatically better results. Their fundamentals have become invisible to them, which frees everything else. Doing anything exceptionally well was never really about talent or simply putting in more hours than everyone else, either. It's a structure, completing shu honestly before rushing to ha, practicing with the narrow, deliberate attention that turns repetition into genuine improvement, staying present with your own performance long enough to actually learn from it, and trusting that the discomfort of the early repetitive stage is building toward a state where the fundamentals disappear entirely and only the work remains. The sword was never really the point. The process underneath it is the same process behind mastering anything. It's available to you the same way it was available to every samurai who ever picked up a blade. That's all for today. I hope you learned something new and found this video helpful. If you have any thoughts or something you'd like to add, I'd love to read them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.